Hello, Internet, and welcome once again to the Free-to-Play cast brought to you by MMOBomb.com, your home for all things free-to-play related. This is episode 201. We're recording on November 17th. You're watching it on the 18th or later. I'm Mike Byrne, aka Magicman, your host as always. Yeah, your host as always. But joining me on the line to talk financials, Revelation Online, and even some Rift, you love him, Mr. Anderson Cooper, Jason Winter. How are you, sir?
I tried to overthrow Mike, so he wouldn't be the host as always, but, Mike who failed.
Hey, you are more than welcome. If you want to take on hosting duties for a week, go ahead, throw the notes together, put your show together. We'll do it. I got no problem with it.
If you think that it screws up enough when you're doing it, man.
Hey, I've got no problem. Somebody else, hell, we let viewers on the show, so
You let me on the show, geez.
Right. Let's just have some
fun.
Schmuck
can get on
Zach here. Out sick, so of course we hope he's feeling better, and Q will be in the office later today pumping out some articles. So just the two of us to run through some important free-to-play news. It's
serious news.
Super serious, earth-shattering news. Let's get to it. All right, what do we got first? Financials, Jason's favorite free-to-play cast. One of them, technically, yes, we know, came out in time for a cast last week, but legitimately, I could not talk, so there was no.
So I should have done the cast. Then.
Right, you should have hosted it, and I apologize if I sound stuffed up. Still not quite 100%, but getting there. So NCSoft's financials came out, then we had Nexon's right behind it, so it's time to do what we do best when the NCSoft financial comes out. Let's start right away, Mr. Winter. How's WildStar doing?
Oh my god, WildStar.
Oh man.
Yet another worst quarter ever. So the launch didn't work, the free-to-play didn't work, the Steam launch didn't work. I don't know why it's still going, honestly.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the graph while you kind of talk through it, because WildStar, don't be deceived by the graph here when I pull it up. It is not a straight line. It is the scale of the graph is so big for the other games that it makes WildStar appear to be a straight line almost.
And that's not me saying why is it still around. It isn't me saying it's a crappy game or whatever. I understand you have different opinions or whatever, but I just can't understand why, with as little as it's bringing in, NCSoft is still keeping it around. I think their reputation for killing games is a little overstated, but I just can't. Again, you look at the graph, you look at it compared to everything else, and you're like, why?
Yeah, City of Heroes fans got to be really angry right now. I mean, they got to be really
always angry. They're just lumped in now with the Star Wars Galaxies fans almost, if they're still not over it, I think.
Okay, so let's boil this down here. Lineage 2 kind of just, it's doing a little bit better than it has, but it's always been kind of stable for the last 6 or so quarters. Relatively stable. The same thing with Ion, surprisingly, right? I guess not all that surprising if you consider that that's probably mainly an Eastern audience at this point.
Yeah, for the most part.
For the most part. Guild Wars 2, not a great quarter for them either, though.
Yeah, they did not recover after putting out a couple more bits of content, over the last quarter, which is what everyone was complaining about. They had the long gap before Heart of Thorns. And they had Heart of Thorns. You have the two, good sales for a couple quarters there, and then they went back into the content gap. Didn't do anything. Didn't do much. I should say. I mean, they did the raids, but didn't do a whole lot in quarter 2. And then they actually put out some more content for quarter 3, and they still declined just a tiny bit. So it makes you wonder if it's just they've hit that point, and it's just not. They're not going to recover past this. So.
Lineage 2 up a little bit, and obviously Blade and Soul just stupid high on these graphs right now, still enjoying its relatively newness in a Western market where it just stupid explosion of Blade and Soul money, and slowly coming back down to earth. What I'm impressed most with Blade and Soul, though, Jason, is if you look at these other graphs, they indicate, some type of big spike release, whether it's a Western release, whether it's a Steam release or an Eastern. There's some type of, or an expansion release maybe. There's always some kind of jump and then normalizing, and we see that across all MMOs, right? Launch day, it's frickin' packed. You can't get in the damn thing, and then 2 months later, BioWare's talking about taking it free to play, right? So we see that with all MMOs, but Blade and Soul's really hanging up there, and it's on its downward trend now, and probably in about 2 quarters will equalize where you see most of NCSoft's titles. But I'm impressed that it's held that high that long.
They actually have mentioned that. They said that in their report. I don't remember the exact wording, but they expected it to be about like this, and for it to come down this a little bit. So they understand that it's still pretty big, but it's stabilizing. It's going to come down and be, maybe right now the number is what, like 40,000 or something. Yeah, it's around like 40,000. So maybe more like the 30 to 35, a little higher, I guess, than what it was. You could see before the North American launch, it hung around like 25 to 30. So I can see they still think it's going to hold on pretty well, at least for a good while. Getting that little additional bump from its North American money.
And again, keep in mind we're talking about million Korean won, so this is 40,000 million Korean won.
Yeah, whatever, 40 billion. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so the conversion rate does get dicey, but we did the conversions a quarter ago just to show in USD what WildStar was, and those numbers were abysmal. And
I'm trying not to click on WildStar, man. Why you got to do this?
And now they're even worse. I don't get it. Like, I enjoy WildStar. I don't think it's there's way better, and some of them, to me personally, are on this chart. There are way worse MMOs out there to be playing that are free to play, that are either really good games with shitty free to play models or really shitty games with an okay free to play model. I mean, I just don't get it with WildStar. It never recovered from what I think is just what initially hurt the game coming out. And even though a lot of that has been addressed, it was maybe just too little too late.
That's what I talk about a lot with MMOs, and I even bring this up a little bit when we're talking about Guild Wars 2. It's like even if you fix something that was horribly broken, you only get that one chance to make a first impression. Yeah. If it's not good at that point, the people who are following it on Facebook or Twitter or had their friends playing it, they're not following it anymore. They don't know about the cool stuff that's happening, how you fix this thing or another thing. So they're never going to get back into it because they aren't paying attention to it, and they've moved on to the next game. And WildStar just had that happen to it, probably worse than just about any other game ever happened.
I've never seen anything like it. I really haven't. Like, I've seen, and Skyforge may be, I mean, not an NCSoft title, obviously, but Skyforge may be next in that kind of box because the feedback is still really, really split on them drastically changing some systems that a Western audience didn't appreciate from launch, and it still seems to be split. Now, on that note, just an aside for people, I have been supplied with a press account for Skyforge to go and take a look at some of those changes at a higher level in the game, so that I don't have to level a whole character just to bring you the info. And Jason, you're handling the Armored Warfare side of that stuff, because those are two games that seem to be in the same box right now.
I'd like to handle the Armored Warfare stuff, but I can't ever get into the game.
Right,
I can't ever get into a match.
they're handling changing a bunch of core systems, but maybe it's too little too late. So we'll both be bringing you some coverage on those two. And I think WildStar just really got hit by that hammer. And I think you predicted that it would make out 2016. If I go back a few episodes.
Maybe. I don't remember.
I don't remember. So, but we were kind of split. It was, some of us thought it was going to finish out the year. Some of us thought it wasn't going to make it out at the year. At this point, middle of November, I got to assume WildStar at least finishes 2016.
They have that big new content update plan too, don't
right? I mean, they have a bunch of content coming out still, and they have a regular content update. It's wow. It's like everything you could want, but it's just not capturing the audience.
Usually when a game is in the dregs like that, they just go silent for like 6 months. So, Firefall, for instance.
Yeah, you just shut off your website.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I mean, they seem as active as ever. So it's really weird to think that they could be. If you didn't see these financials, you wouldn't have any idea probably that it's doing so poorly.
Yeah, it's just stunning. Also on the financial side, Nexon released its Q3. Now, we should close NCSoft, by the way, with saying, company-wide, they were down, but still better than Q3 last year. So I don't think there's any huge, oh my god, NCSoft problems besides really WildStar. And if I'm an NC exec, I'm probably a little concerned about Guild Wars 2 at this point too.
Yeah.
Not in the we're gonna close the doors, but this has got to stop. We can't keep going down like this. So those would be my two worries. WildStar, I'm not even thinking about at this point. Sorry, WildStar fans, and I am one of you. I enjoy me some WildStar, but it's got to be, flight time on that one. And
I will say it's
2.
pretty funny.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it is pretty funny how they have the graph set up with all the sales breakdown by IP. And, of course, all the bars are about the same, even if the numbers are different. So you got WildStar looking like it's almost as good as Guild Wars 2 if you just go by the height of the bars.
Right.
Except they're like 10 times the amount. But.
Nexon also released its Q3 financials and does show that it grew quarter over quarter, but opposite to NCSoft, it is down looking at Q3 last year compared to Q3 this year. And, of course, they have what they believe to be their trigger points on here as well. Right, Jason? All right, so we got Jason back after Skype crash, PC crash, whatever. Jason, we were talking about Nexon's third quarter financials up over Q2, but not up over Q3 last year, where NCSoft kind of had the reverse. And Nexon kind of has its own hot button points in its portfolio, I would assume, right?
Yeah, and it's a little tougher for us over here to really get a handle on how they're doing, just in the sense that most of their business is Korea and China, so that's where they really put a lot of the emphasis on their financial report, and that's what they say is a lot of it was driven by a strong performance of key PC online titles in Korea and China. Reports negatively impacted by Japanese yen appreciation. So yeah, okay, whatever. They're really big on Tree of Savior though. They said good things about it, especially in Japan.
Yeah.
And a little bit more for the U.S. release. So. That's something they're really happy with. Also, Maple Story is doing well for them in Korea.
Huge Maple Story update coming, too. So a big patch for that. We'll have that story today on MMOBomb.
Mm-hmm. So. And they also, they had some good things to say about the Riders of Icarus launch in North America, along with another game. What was that? Hit game? What was it? Heroes of Incredible Tales.
Yeah, they're mobile titles.
That's apparently really big all over the place for them. They mentioned in the North America, the Asia stuff, so...
I think it's funny, though, that Riders of Icarus is a big NAEU driver, because there's a lot of people still complaining that you can't play it in certain parts of the East, which is where Nexon's, base is, so... I think that's still kind of funny. Riders of Icarus, still doing it for me. I'll admit I don't play it nearly as often as I did through the first 2 updates, through I think like the level 35 or the level 45 update. I think 35 update. Love their dungeons, yeah, but it's run of the mill. It is totally run of the mill. But I do enjoy it. So I'm not surprised that out of Nexon's entire portfolio, that might be the one that's doing relatively well, particularly in the West, because it definitely feels like a more traditional Western MMORPG. So I'm not surprised there. I am still stunned, and this may just be me, totally just not being ever familiar with the title or anything, and not comprehending at one point how big this game was. I am just stunned that Maple Story is still a thing. And not like they're, Maple Story 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or, like an IP, but the original Maple Story is still a thing that is super financially viable and getting a huge update still. I'm just stunned.
How many RuneScape updates do we get? We get something from them almost every month.
I guess that's true, too.
I mean, it's sort of like the equivalent of it. The Western equivalent is just this old 2D game. Or I guess RuneScape isn't really 2D, but this old game that people are just latching onto and never, ever leaving.
Yeah. Although RuneScape, at least when they made huge leaps, they were like, all right, we're going to call it RuneScape 2 now. All right, we're going to call it RuneScape 3 now that we're going into 3 dimensions and a new graphical engine and everything. Maple Story's like, fuck it, it's Maple Story. Here's some new content for you, keep paying, and people do, I never personally got all that into Maple Story, just not my type of game. But, hey, more power to you. You picked the right one if you're on that one, because apparently you're going to be able to play it till you're like 90.
Just about, yeah. I mean, they also are a lot more... really interested, almost seems like throughout the financial report, much more interested in talking about what's going to happen in Q4, talking about all the mobile games they're going to launch. They say they expect a little bit of a revenue drop year to year, but in terms of North America, what were they saying? They said, maybe that wasn't the big one.
At G-Star, which starts technically today, they're exhibiting 35 games.
Yeah.
28 mobile and 7 PC.
I mean, they're definitely going head on into that, which I want to say some other company I was looking at said we're kind of going the opposite of that because we think it's oversaturated. So I don't know, especially over. I mean, maybe it's just that much different over in Asia, in Korea, and especially Japan. I mean, I know they really are probably more big into their cell phone stuff than we are, but I just wonder how much that is oversaturated in that territory.
G-Star's always a fun conference because we're always like at least 12 hours behind, right? But then we're also the translation behind as well because it's not usually native English.
And usually at least 2 to 3 years behind what they're showing there is how it's going to come over here.
Right. So stay tuned to Stiparu for cutting time G-Star stuff, and I'm sure we'll post the big stuff on MMOBomb as well. Overall, I think if you're NCSoft and you're Nexon right now, you got to be pretty happy. It was a decent third quarter. Some increases, some not. The decreases weren't all that surprising. On the NCSoft, I think it's time to maybe figure out what the hell you're going to do with Guild Wars 2 to stop the slide. As a Guild Wars 2 player, what is it? What is going on right now that's just this slide for the game?
It's like I said, and what I've talked about before is that they really almost put too much of an emphasis on the cash shop as opposed to actual content. And by the time they get around to the content, a lot of people have already left and moved on. Like they announced their new updates coming on Tuesday, and they announced it just this last week. Used to be when that happened, my Twitter would be lit up with people saying, "Oh man, look at the trailer! Look at how cool this looks." And now I have all those same people there, and maybe one of them mentioned it. It's just like the fire is gone from that. So I don't know if they can really recover and they're working on the next expansion. That's something they always talk about. And that was actually, I listened to the actual call, the investors call, and they brought that up. But man, as disappointed as a lot of people were with Heart of Thorns, it's tough to imagine that really, bringing people back and providing a big chunk of cash. So
my what is it? The Revenant class?
Yeah.
Is still sitting in the...
You haven't played.
Is still sitting in the do you want to accept the boost on this class area. Yeah. It has never made it out.
Granted, I haven't played either. I've got like an hour in the last month. So
well, you keep punking out on Witcher 3 and I'll punk out on Guild Wars 2. All right, moving on. Speaking of MMORPGs, Rift Starfall Prophecy launched yesterday. So the next expansion in Tryon Worlds' title here. Jason, not being too much of a Rift person, I'll just give you kind of like, I did a preview article because Simon and Chris from the team took me through some of the new features and zones a few days ahead of release. And then I got to play it for, I think I spent maybe 4 or 5 hours in it last night. I spent another hour or two in it today just putzing around with different systems before the show, and I'm going to play it afterwards. If you bought either of the expansions, they came with a 65 boost, so you can immediately boost one of your characters to jump into the expansion or create something new and boost it and jump right in. The expansion covers the level 65 through the new level cap of level 70, adds 4 to 5 new zones, a couple dungeons. There's going to be a raid that's coming. It adds the new planar fragment system for adding stats to your gear slots. It adds the gear upgrade system. There's a lot going on in this one. And the big piece is that people are still fighting over, even in the comments on my article and on various free-to-play casts, is the actual pricing of the expansion. I think it's funny that, to me, this has got to be a whether you're a Rift player or not thing. If you're a Rift player that played through Nightmare Tide and into Starfall Prophecy, you probably really like, or at least more in favor of paying for the full expansion than you were the way Nightmare Tide was handled, where you got the level increases, you got the zones, but you were going to pay for things. And like it or not, gang, those things you had to pay for. You had to. You had to get your earring slot. You had to open up the attunement so that you could actually wear some of the gear from Nightmare Tides, because the gear was locked off. You could get it, but you just couldn't use it. I mean, so there were piecemeal things you pretty much had to frickin' buy. They were forced purchases done one at a time, and Rift players didn't really like it. Non-Rift players, though, seem to be commenting that to them, this takes it totally out of being free to play anymore. And I find that funny, considering that EverQuest 2, Guild Wars 2 now. I mean, EverQuest and EverQuest 2 have been doing this for a decade, right? Where the game is free to play and the current expansion is really the only thing you pay for.
Not being free to play, but they've only like 5 years maybe.
Right, but since then, the only thing you paid for was things you wanted in the cash shop, which were totally optional stuff, or the latest expansion. Guild Wars 2 just did it. We're going to make the whole game free, sell you the expansion. And now people just don't like it. To them, like, does this take Rift out of free to play for you not being a Rift, player per se?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that you just have to accept it. Even if there's a free to play MMORPG, you're going to pay money for the expansion. That's just all there is to it. There's no way around that. Literally, you're going to pay to get the content.
In some way, yeah.
In some way, even if it's like what they did last time with the piecemeal stuff. And I could see the issue with that is they wanted, because Rift also is has this open world and all the dynamic events and so on. They wanted, I suppose, to go with the notion of you don't separate your player base. That's one thing you always want to try to avoid. But they just couldn't do it without, as you said, ticking off a lot of their players with kind of the piecemeal aspect of things. So that's what a lot of games are doing now. Yeah, you just have to pay to get into that new play space. Now, other games like your PvP games, when they introduce a new map, like World of Tanks or whatever, they're not going to charge you for that new map. They're still just going to have all their other stuff. But a game, an MMORPG, what's all about, at least partially about exploring, finding new maps, and going to new zones and whatever, you're just going to have to deal with it. If you don't, then sorry, you're not going to get your way, or you're going to get something like the last Rift expansion and be upset with that. So.
Yeah, here I'm going to read you the quote from the team, because I asked about this. It's kind of my job, so I got to ask some questions.
Ask some tough questions.
And so I asked Simon and Chris on the line. By the way, if you're not a Rift player, my apologies. Simon Finch is the senior design director, and Chris Jr. is the executive producer for Rift. So these are the guys to talk to. And Jason put little separator headlines in, or byline, or mini headlines in my piece. I didn't even notice until just now.
You told me to.
No, I just told it. I saw the quotes. I'm talking about the all-in-one deal and the.
Okay, the subheads. Okay.
Yeah, you put the subheaders in there. I don't care. It looks great.
Damn right.
So I said, to them, I said, if you don't buy the expansion, you don't have anything, right? You don't get the levels, you don't get the zones. They said no. And I said, okay, so let's talk about the Switch. And Simon said, this came directly from the players. Obviously, the game has to make money somehow, to your point, Jason. And Simon says, we gave away things like the content portion in Nightmare Tide, but then players, well, they had to buy things like earring slots and gear unlock and he just sort of trailed off. And so I just jumped in and I said, we hated it. And we did. I hated it. But at the end of the day, I was like, well, why didn't you just charge me $20 or $40 for the whole expansion, just be done with it, when I bought all this stuff from Nightmare Tide? And he kind of laughed, like I said what he couldn't. And I'm not putting words in his mouth. Simon didn't say, oh, players hated it. But I kind of got the impression that that was the same thing he was thinking. And he said, yes, players really didn't like it. This time around, we went with one fee for everything, and the feedback so far has been much better. And of course, there's naysayers, right? But for the most part. And so I asked the question that you just asked, Jason, what about dividing your player base? Now, granted, I'm not talking about that brand new player. Like, Jason doesn't play Rift. I convince him to play Rift, and he starts playing. There's already a gap between the two of us here. I'm talking about Jason and I are both at level 65. We play the game. I buy the expansion. Jason doesn't. What, are you worried about that? Is that portion of the audience big enough that it should be a concern? And Chris's reply was, I think, right on. There are 65 levels of free content right now in Rift. There's a ton to play through for new or returning players, and we hope that by giving such a large amount of content away for free, we can earn their purchase of the expansion when they arrive at level 65 for the endgame content. And I think that's, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can't argue with it. I personally like it, but even if I wasn't a Rift player, looking at it blindly and looking at player feedback the way you did it previously, which other games have done, and looking at how you're doing it now, which other games also do, I think they made the right call.
Yeah, I mean, I brought up PvP games like World of Tanks or MOBAs or whatever like that, shooters, and they have a different system that they can use. They can make the entire game free, and then just give you, just charge you for skins or XP boosts or whatever. And an MMORPG, I just don't think can do that so well. I think they can make all the leveling process free or whatever, but then when you get to the end game, such as it is, you kind of do have to pay in order to actually get to the good parts, the raids or the extra zones or whatever. So I just think that's how it's got to be.
Now, I will say this. Again, I'm only hours into it over the course of yesterday and today, so I'm sure I'll have some more opinions coming in the coming days here on the website. I'm enjoying the expansion so far. Yes, it is, as far as the leveling portion of it, it's the same as it ever was in Rift. You got your quests, your quest hub, your Carnage quests along the way. Yeah, it's the same as it ever was. You're still gaining your planar levels so that you can fill out your planar attunements if you haven't filled all those up already. So that portion is just more of the same for me, but it's done well. There were some lag issues, but it seems to have been addressed, and they're hot fixing a number of things right now, like minions and things like that. As we speak, the game is down for those hot fixes. I was really impressed with the planar fragments gear stuff, because when we first got a peek at that, Jason, both of us kind of thought, this is really overly complex for a game that already has arguably a number of complex systems for players to get into. Now you're gemming, but you're not gemming your gear, you're gemming the slots. By the way, those gems can be infused and leveled up, and then and maybe it'll get a stat, maybe it won't, and it just sounded needlessly complex. The UI team did a fantastic job on this system, Jason. You will have it down like that. There's a lot going on, and you can min-max for fucking days if you want to. But it's really easy to understand. It does give a feeling of more control over the stats behind your player, going straight after the stats that you're interested in. The story is good so far with this whole comet ripping through and all the planes, and it makes sense that all the lands are really diverse and don't make any topographical sense in a real world. They're doing, and it's generally being well received as far as chat in-game, besides minions being down, which if you would check the forums, you would know that the minions were disabled and pending a hot fix. So chat, there you go. All in all, I'm going to give it a thumbs up for now. And somebody brought this up in the comments. We used to, instead of giving things scores, we used to just do a thumbs up or thumbs down on each news story. So like NCSoft, we would have said NCSoft to Nexon, thumbs up, nice job. Rift, I'd give a thumbs up for right now, with the right to change it if it becomes, for me in the coming week. I know you don't care, so we could just skip on to the last topic.
I'm all thumbs.
All thumbs. Last up today, we have two first looks on the site. We kind of teased one with a little bit of a preview on episode 200 with Zach. We had just gotten into Revelation Online's first closed beta test. We also did a first look for Versus Battle of the Gladiator, which is a bit of a different game. Not an MMORPG, not a card game. It was nice to play something different for a little while, so maybe worth taking a look. Let's start with Revelation Online real quick. My feeling is really adequately expressed in the first look video right off the bat. It was a first look video that I put a disclaimer on.
I saw that.
That's how strongly I felt about this right off the bat. That we trudge Jason, we do this for all content, right? We want to be the first to post something, right? So that our audience is the first to get it and maybe attract new people that don't know about MMOBomb. Of course, there's that business aspect of it. But then there's the other side of it that it's like, this just really isn't ready to be shown off in this way. And I feel bad doing it because it's really not a representation of what I believe the final product is going to look like. There have been games that I had no problem doing a first look, knowing that they were in no position to be launched, but that's because I did not have any expectation that they were going to change things. I don't think Revelation is going to quite be in this condition at launch. So I put up a big disclaimer that it feels more like a closed alpha or like a final alpha. There's a lot of localization that still needs to be done, which is surprising. I know localization isn't quick. It's not quick work. It can be, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that there's a lot there. But even just gameplay wise, there were obvious bugs, and these were starter quests for this stuff to still be in. It just didn't feel there. And I know Zach is a fan of the combat over Blade and Souls. I didn't get the same feeling he did. That, yeah, it felt fast and fluid, and it was kind of engaging, but there was a certain aspect of so unrealistic that I was just like, oh, I feel like I'm playing a little bit of an arcade game, and I don't think that's the best way to describe it, because there's no realistic combat in an MMORPG. That's a bad word. I'll figure out a good word. What were your thoughts watching the first look and some of the coverage we've seen from other channels?
I actually admit, I thought I saw that. I thought it looked like pretty good combat. I thought it did seem kind of fluid. Looked like the monsters were doing some interesting attacks. It wasn't, too generic in that sense. But I mean, overall, yeah, it does look like, first of all, like I say, it's not done. I mean, there's like 3 different languages in that game. You had a little English, little Chinese, or
and
little
some Russian.
Yeah, it's just like all over the place. Or Korean, I guess, Chinese. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, this is not representative, I think, of what the product they want is. But for some reason, they're putting it out there. I guess maybe sales are that bad. They got to pump people in there to try and sell more of their packs. I don't know, but.
I'm gonna sum this up. I think this is a brilliant sum up. I'm not gonna score this one. I'm gonna give it a sideways thumb right now. Going back to the old school rating system on MMOBomb, I'm gonna give it a sideways thumb. I'm indifferent on it right now, only because I think a lot of the stuff that I had a problem with is going to change over the course of the next beta test. If I did not have that feeling, it definitely would be a thumbs down right now. Mr. Heartless, on Jason's article today on the infographic that they released, sums it up nicely in a 10-step sequence of events, and I think this is a way a lot of us feel right now. Number 1, got hyped for the game. 2, bought Founders Pack. 3, waited while getting more hyped for the game. 4, dealt with closed beta 1 launch day issues. 5, played for a few hours on the much more stable 3rd day of closed beta 1. 6, realized the game was a generic mess with subpar action combat. 7, realized I no longer had any desire to continue to test the alpha client. 8, stopped playing. 9, regretted founding the game. And 10, quietly hopeful that it will get better, but not expecting much. Now, I think Mr. Heartless might be a little more on the thumbs down side than I am on some of those things. I didn't think the action combat was that subpar. There was just something off about it for me that I'm hoping to dig into more in some future closed betas. But I think that's the way a lot of people feel about Revelation Online right now. I'm thinking this one might have went into closed beta just a touch early.
I just wish people could explain to me why they get hyped over this. Like, if you see the pretty graphics and you're like, wow, that looks pretty, and I'm going to throw $40 at it for that. Why? Why do you?
On the flip side, if you just want to jump in and have some real action combat, beating the shit out of things, getting some skills, having armor that degrades and damage that shows up on your... My woman looked messed
I know she got naked
up at the end of that first look. She was naked and half of her face was missing. Half of her face was missing. I tried to zoom in on it before I got knocked into a trap.
Yes, yeah.
But half of her face was gone. This is, for me, I'm going to give this one a thumbs up, right? But only because it's stupid distraction. It's not like super colossal great game, but just stupid distraction versus Battle of the Gladiator. It's truly just a combat-oriented game. There's PvE where you go in solo and do it. There's obviously PvP where you're doing death matches and things, and you create a champion, you level it up, you get it gear, you teach it skills, and you keep going. The obvious downside is there are a ton of bugs still in the game. And at one point, this was a purchasable game on Steam. It kind of came out of nowhere like 4 days ago. Jason was like, hey, anybody see this? And everybody was like, no. Apparently it went free to play. All right, let's look at it. I had fun in the game. It's stupid fun, but there's a lot of bugs in it, and there is nobody playing it. For a game that actually had to be purchased at one point, you'd expect some sort of player base, but there's nobody playing this thing. I skipped right over PvP matches, Jason, because the lobbies literally said 0 on all of them. But I'm going to give it a thumbs up for just stupid, dumb fun if you want a distraction for a little while. What about you?
I agree with the stupid part. That much seems accurate. I'm actually trying to pull it up on Steam Spy, see what it says about players. Apparently, they say about 8,000 people own it, and there have been about 4,000 players over the last 2 weeks, which I don't know. I saw you had like 2 people in one match and 1 person in another, so I don't know how there were that many people there. But
yeah, well, and they do have 2 servers though, North American and European. So I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of European players, I guess. But what did you think of the game itself? I mean, it's not super in-depth or anything, but I think it serves a nice little get distracted for half an hour, beat the piss out of things purpose.
But I actually I started playing Tiger Knight Empire War a little bit lately, and that to me is slightly more refined in terms of, and a little more in-depth than in terms of like a hack and slash, beat the heck out of stuff game. I like playing that a little bit more. I think I'd rather go into that than this.
Oh, see, I watched that to the point of it looked so boring. I didn't even want to do a first look on it. When you asked, I was like, if you want to do one, go ahead. I don't care.
Yeah, maybe. If I get around to it. If my computer holds out.
All right, let's slide over to the weekly bombs. Make sure you let us know in the comments what you guys think of Revelation Online and Versus. I'm going to give it to bomb to the Rift model change. I know there's some people on the other side of the fence on this one, but I kind of disagree being a Rift player. I'm totally okay with just paying for the expansions. EverQuest has done it for years. Guild Wars 2's done it. I didn't have a problem with them doing it. I always felt like I got my money's worth in those situations. And while I probably spent the same amount over Nightmare Tide as I did with the expansion Starfall Prophecy. So dollar-wise, I probably didn't have much of a discrepancy between the two. I felt badly doing it the way Nightmare Tide did it. So I got to give it to Bomb to Tryon Worlds for switching up the model. And I know that may not be popular with everybody, but that's just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth.
Pretty much everybody hates Tryon Worlds. I caught a glimpse of the first bomb here, so yeah, you're gonna get some for that.
I probably am. Go ahead, sir.
I'm gonna give an A-bomb to my voice recorder for crapping out on me just before I was gonna do a Path of Exile interview earlier this week. I had it like just before the interview, like 5 minutes before. Clicked on it a little bit, make sure everything's working fine. Okay, great. I go to record, the record button doesn't work. I go to the play, try to play back, that doesn't work. Nothing works. I have to get the guy to do the interview the next day, so eventually we got all that, and then I went and I bought a new recorder. Just got it from the office like about an hour ago, 2 hours. Haven't opened it up yet, so.
Oh my god!
Thank you, Amazon.
Jason, god damn it!
What? Would you have bought it for me?
No, your fucking address was visible. Now I gotta edit that. God damn it. Why don't you just show your book of passwords again?
Here, let me give you my social security number and show you my driver's license. Here, my credit card number is 4625.
Oh my god. Alright, well I already got to do some editing on this with the disconnect anyway, so...
I'm just making your life difficult, man.
Right, it's free-to-play cast will be up next Wednesday. From the viewers... I was like, please don't, please don't. Oh, God, I see his name, which means the address is right there. Grimsbane says, I haven't really done an A-bomb in a while, but it feels like it's needed for this company who seems to leave a sour taste in most mouths these days. I'd like to give my A-bomb out to Tryon Worlds. I don't know what they're thinking when it comes to deciding to move back to buy-to-play for new expansions, because first off, just because you add new gear systems in doesn't make it game-changing. You'd have to do something on the level of what Guild Wars 2 did with Heart of Thorns to even begin to put value on your expansion, but sadly, we all know people will buy into the same old, lame old, nothing new system that is Tryon. Even the 5 new maps just look as bland as the programming skills. I'm glad I made the right choice by not going back to that game because no one should feed their poison. Make this short if you feel you need to choose to. No, it's all right. I'll put it all in there.
No, we'll keep going.
It disagrees with mine, so I love to give the counterpoint. I'd also like to give a dub bomb to ArenaNet. Even though WVW's, the dubs, is still a mess in Guild Wars 2, and hopefully they'll sort that out, they're still bringing in new players each day, and I have to admit, I keep coming back because it feels like the most solid MMORPG out there at the moment, while I wait for something just as good, if not better, to come along. So you're bashing Tryon for doing the same thing Guild Wars 2 did, but... Grimsbane is offering the point of view, Jason, and I don't know if you agree with this, that Guild Wars 2 expansion was game-changing enough from its original gameplay that an expansion cost is warranted in that case.
Yeah, he's bashing Guild Wars 2, or he's bashing Tryon because they do something different from Guild Wars 2. That's what he said. That it should have been on the same level of what Guild Wars 2's expansion was.
Right, but that's what I'm asking you. As far as the cost, arguably to me, I don't know if that, personally, again, I don't know if that holds much water. I don't think Heart of Thorns was so revolutionary, changing the way Guild Wars 2 was played. I think it was more of the same with some new classes, some new a new class, new story. You know,
the zones are very different. They're much different from what they had in the basic game.
I will defer to you being the Guild Wars 2 expert. That's why I haven't seen the Rift zones,
but I assume they do look kind of similar to other stuff. So I can kind of get where he's coming from on that front. But it's honestly he's almost the opposite of what I've heard from most people. Like most people saying they disliked how Tryon did expansions. They like this better, and a lot of people are also kind of crapping on Heart of Thorns for its various reasons. So.
I can give you that. The zones
are
they're beautiful, but they're on par with the other zones you've already seen.
Let me take you through Verdant Brink for a little while, see how long you survive.
Go ahead, take the next one, sir.
All right, Nintendo says, A-bomb to the current market of free-to-play games. There are no serious Western releases to count on that might actually become a surprise hit. All we by now do is hope and wait for Korean MMOs to be released in the West. In the meanwhile, my premium VPN subscription is running overtime because I majorly play on Asian servers, like Figureheads, Soulworker JP, Black Desert China, and stuff. All we got in the West are established games like Terra, kinda dead, SWTOR, that free-to-play model though, World of I still have to pay for this, Warcraft, or other smaller games that I wouldn't give a damn about, even if they slap me in the face. I can agree in terms of like MMORPGs, I'll agree that the free-to-play stuff in the West is kind of stagnating. Really not a whole lot out there to look forward to. In terms of other types of games.
Right, but then what the fuck is the incentive when WildStar does what it does?
Well, it wasn't free to play at first, and they really screwed everything up. But other than that, yeah, I kind of agree with you on that point. And let's shed one more tear for EverQuest next, shall we?
Boo! Deathlog says, A-bomb to Revelation Online. Never have I had to read 3 damn languages in one beta in my life. I understand the beta part of it, but damn, how in the hell is there 3 languages? Russian, some Asian language, Korean or some shit, and English. I'm just gonna quit this beta and wait for the next one, or get Rosetta Stone so I can figure out the other half of that shit out. Dub-bomb to the Division 1.4 update for adding world tiers and making it easier to high-end gear and gear sets in the open world instead of having to in the DZ. I have not played the Division in a while. I think I'm going to have to jump into that tonight.
Maybe that's a great business opportunity for Rosetta Stone. Offer them an automated service for MMOs for coming over from other regions.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it until like one full core system was totally in another language. And I was like, well, okay, so now I have no clue what this skill system is doing. Go ahead, sir.
All right, Sky Shadow says A-bomb to Blizzard. They really play with my emotions. First, they give us a kick-ass intro in the Legion expansion. Awesome. And then they killed King Varian Rin. How could you? And now they're apologizing to us by putting him in a world beyond space, time, and logic, aka Heroes of the Storm. I'm happy to know he's coming to the Nexus, but why did you have to kill him in the first place? Now what are they going to add next? I know, just get some old shit, light it on fire, give it a hammer, and you're done. Wait a second, that's Ragnaros, and he's coming as well. Good, a literal hot shit. Sky Shadow, never watch Game of Thrones. If you're sad about your favorite characters dying, never watch Game of Thrones.
Shea Roulet says, "Da bomb to Final Fantasy XIV, which helped provide an escape during a tough time when I was in the middle of leaving my job in the gaming industry to now working in IT at a financial institution. I was feeling kind of devastated that in order to move my career forward, I had to leave the gaming industry in the studio I had once dreamed of working at and did work at for almost 3 years. I don't know if I'll ever re-enter the gaming industry, but Final Fantasy XIV reminded me how great it is to play an MMO as a fan and not as an employee. A-bomb to drama-filled job transitions. P.S. Shea Roulet, in case you were wondering how I pronounced it correctly, is pronounced Shea Roulet, means blue in Latin. My grandmother was a Catholic school teacher. Pronounce it however you like, as long as you don't pronounce it late to dinner. I would just have to say this, Shea Roulet. At least you had the opportunity to have your dream job for a dream company for any period of time. To me, there's a lot of people that, never get that chance. So it sucks that it may be over. You don't know that it's over for good, and you at least got to do it at some point in your life. That's pretty damn cool in my book.
MMOBomb is my dream job. I love you, man.
Right. See, Jason's just living the dream. You stop pointing. I have to edit this twice because of you already, damn it. Question of the week last week. What's been your favorite free-to-play cast moment over 200 bloody episodes? Or what would you like us to do or change to keep the show fresh for another 200? Somebody on the site said the gaming community sucks and we suck too. But that wasn't a way to make it better. So I just thought I'd give you that feedback. We suck, but so does the gaming community. So
everybody sucks.
Yep, everybody sucks. Nintendo says, question of the week. My moment is actually every time I force you to pick my comments, was mostly as long as a book. Just kidding. All episodes are a highlight to me. The talk just feels more honest than others. It's the only podcast I'm willing to watch now. But surely the ones where I caused a few laughs are small highlights for me. The fact that I still work on the plan to steal the password book out of Jason's desk, or that I still think involving a community into the development of a game is the right thing to do. Overall, I'm quite happy with the cast. I sometimes wish to make an appearance there myself, but then again, I am an English plebe with a time zone that does not work with it. XD. Well, anyways, keep going, guys. Thank you, Nintendo. Much appreciated, as always. Mwah. Go ahead, Jason.
Hellsworth says, my favorite free-to-play cast moment was the Jedi consoler.
Zach.
I don't know if his specialty is hugging or if it'll be related to the new Nintendo Switch console. Apparently, according to the hype, they'll be flying off the shelf for some random hype Jedi reason. Well, yeah, they're flying off the shelves because the Jedi are force pushing them around.
Jedi consoler, that's so awesome. Deathlog says, my favorite moment is watching Q. For some reason, she can't seem to find good internet no matter where she moves to in the United States. It's so bad sometimes she ends up moving and talking like Max Headroom. There's a reference. Deathlog, you are amazing. Go ahead, Jason.
Adrian says, Jason, thank you very much for the bomb. I do not think I deserve the mention, especially on an anniversary episode. As Magic Man said, there are many longtime loyal listeners, but I am deeply humbled. Thank you very much. Felt I had to repay the mention of the cast somehow and tried spending some time looking for Brim's story. I got lucky and found it relatively fast. At Magic Man, the story you're looking for is on episode 29. Ironically, the episode name is The Saga of Brim Tim. Story is between 3:15 and 10:45. Nice. I assume that's the poop. That's the poop story.
No, that's the laptop story. How he busted his laptop.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
And blamed it on his girl's shelf of books. Thank you, Adrian. Go ahead.
Question of the week. Not a specific favorite moment here, but to be honest, I missed the thumbs up, thumbs down part of the.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
All right, I understand why you moved on from that, and when needed, do a number score instead. But I just miss it. Maybe it wasn't the format, and it's just a personal impression that got left on me at the time. But I felt like everything prior to that part was the prelude and the entertainment. The thumbs up, thumbs down was for me the peak of the discussion, the time when the big calls are made. Whenever I was hearing that question, my interest was suddenly doubled. Question of the week number 2, even though the second question was meant for new listeners, I would like to see MMOBomb's founder, Luis, as a guest on the podcast, maybe as a future anniversary of the free-to-play cast or the site. I remember seeing him on another MMO site's YouTube channel at E3 or a similar gaming event. They were chilling at a table chatting, and he seemed like a cool guy. It would be nice to have him tell us about how or why he started MMOBomb, maybe a cool story or two about MMOBomb.
So yes, I have broached this with Luis, and I've often, for many years now, thought Luis should appear on certain things. It is just not his cup of tea. He does not, it's not something he enjoys doing, and he doesn't feel comfortable doing. But I can at least direct you, if you want to learn more about why and how MMOBomb started, there's an old show on the MMOBomb YouTube called Ask MMOBomb. Go to episode 1. That and Luis and the whole story is discussed on there in answer to a similar question. So I can at least give you that. Doubtful Luis will make an appearance on the free-to-play cast, but you never know. Carito PT, Magic Man, get off my porch is the best moment ever. I forgot about that.
How did you remember that?
My wife, who's been on the show before, Domina, when she is imbibing in certain adult beverages while we have friends over, she likes to argue with certain said friends. And because we're both smokers, I know, yeah, you can chastise me in the comments, but we smoke outside because we don't want that stuff in the house, particularly with kids. So we'll go out on the porch to smoke. Invariably, whatever drunken argument is taking place always gets brought out onto the porch, and Demina always threatens to kick people off of our porch. So that's where that comes from. We talked about that on the show one time. Particularly a previous host named Celfius was usually the bane of that get off my porch from Demina. Always happened. Go ahead, sir.
All right, T-Call 2399 says, question of the week. As far as things to change, you guys should try to incorporate more non-free-to-play stuff into the cast. You've read several of my comments, and they've been Final Fantasy 14 based. Mike is a big FF14 guy, so maybe a quick chat about it every now and then.
So incorporate more non-free-to-play stuff in the free-to-play
cast.
I think I kind of pushed the limit of what I can get away with on that topic when we do talk about Final Fantasy 14 or World of Warcraft or Black Desert or things like that. I could try and push it a little bit more, but eventually the YouTube comments are going to lambaste me. I try and keep it tied to something free-to-play, if we're going to talk about that.
People complain enough when we cover Star Wars Old Republic, or I just think on Atlas Reactor games that have at least a free-to-play-ish component. And actual Final Fantasy 14 now.
Louis Sell says, I honestly remember Mike's private episode shows where he looks like he's trying to hit on the audience with a savvy 70s douchebag. I believe it was the Ask MMOBomb or the first few episodes of the Free-to-Play cast. Love you, Mike. Bring it back. I actually, when I first came back to this site 2 years ago
The mustache. I
had the mustache for the show I was in, But he's talking about Ask MMOBomb, which was when I was originally at the site. When I first came back, I really wanted to bring that show back. I liked doing that show because it was anything. Like, I remember we talked about books that were gaming related and things like that. But the owner of the site, it didn't get a ton of views, right? And so business side is focus on something else. So...
Yeah.
Sign a petition. If you, I would love to do Ask MMOBomb again. I have thousands and thousands of dollars of camera equipment specifically to do stuff like that I don't get nearly the chance to do that I want to do. So sign a petition, I guess, and we'll give it to Luis. Go ahead, Jason.
James Esparza says, most of my favorite moments since I began going down the crazy train known as the free-to-play cast always involved Jason Winter. A quote from Jason I used to torment my LOL friends with, what's that, Sonny? League of Lemons? I don't want no lemons. Corny but gold, and I do not remember saying that. League of Lemons.
Nioniel says, get off my porch. Another free moment, another great moment. So I'll take the next one too. Sky Shadow says, for me, this is the best episode. It's a milestone, was a lot of laughter, a lot of jokes, all around happy, a good time. And maybe because I have a memory of a goldfish or less. But in any case, good job, and keep it up for as long as you can. Dub-bomb just for that. Thank you so much, Sky Shadow. Go ahead.
Martin the Messiah says, happy birthday. One of my favorite moments was when Havoc gave an A-bomb for the zombie apocalypse. That would suck, yeah. I don't know if you remember that. Another moment was when Brim said he had wet dreams when he saw news about games like Hawken coming out soon.
He was very excited, and that was one where I started talking about maybe I should edit a lot of this in post. Anytime Brim and Havoc were on, I usually had to consider chunking things out of the show before I put them up. 9 times out of 10, I put them up anyway and just figured it was easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. The Seventh Sin says, congrats, guys. I never write, but I always watch. Love your show. Been watching for years. Sometimes I miss the gameplay while you talk, but hey, I know it's a hassle. Seventh Sin, thank you for taking the time to put a comment like that in. It's much appreciated. The gameplay isn't a hassle. It's really easy to do. I have all the footage anyway because I made most of the first looks for things we're talking about. The problem is we end up, because I have a first look for a game that we did 3 years ago when it came out, and we happen to be talking about it today. When I show that footage in the first look or in the free-to-play cast, invariably I end up getting 15 comments about the UI being out of date and stuff like that. And so it's not worth the negative portion of that, and that it would become a hassle if, okay, we're going to talk about this week. Jason, I need you to go and get 15 minutes of B-roll footage. For this game, I'm going to go for a weekly show that is meant to be listened to more than it is watched. Yeah, it becomes a hassle at that point. Go ahead, Jason.
Polo Bornfly says, great episode. Guess I've been a long time listener and I loved every bit of it, but 2K is doing great actually. Remember they published Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead and NBA 2K17, which like all the rest of their 2K basketball games chart for 10 out of 12 months. So 2K is just fine, a heads up. And that was in response to Evolve getting the semi-axe.
Ladies and gents, thanks for the feedback, especially on 200 episodes. It's much appreciated. We all love you to death. Question of the week this week. Obviously, everything for free is awesome, but realistically, knowing publishers and developers do have to make money, how would you like to see expansions or large additional content pieces treated money-wise? Pay for it all? Buy it in pieces? Maybe you have a totally different way that you would do this. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget your dub bombs, your A bombs, dub bomb for something good, A bomb for something bad, or your questions for anybody on the panel. Until next time, where can everybody find you, Jason?
Find me on Twitter at WinterInformal, streaming twitch.tv/JasonWinter, and you saw my address earlier, so find me there too.
No, they're not going to see that. I promise you. I am leaving the aftermath of that in.
Yeah.
But we'll cut out the fact that your address was there. I'm Mike Byrne, aka Magic Man. You can follow me personally on Twitter at MagicMan1, MAGICKMANN1, or of course follow MMOBomb at MMOBomb. Very easy. And come on over to the site, check out all the great articles, videos, giveaways, and more. Until next week, stay safe. We'll see you on the servers.